Something changed in 2026. Not loudly, not overnight, but quietly. Across charts, crowds, algorithms, and global conversations. Suddenly, SB19 wasn't being introduced anymore. They were being recognized. From international stages to unexpected global mentions, one question started spreading beyond fandoms. Did SB19 finally go worldwide in 2026? Watch till the end and decide for yourself. Like, share, and subscribe for deep music stories you won't hear anywhere else. In 2026, a strange question began appearing in places where SB19's name had never been common before. It wasn't asked by fan accounts or dedicated communities. It appeared in comment sections, reaction videos, and quiet online discussions from people with no emotional attachment at all. The question wasn't excitement. It was curiosity. Had SB19 become worldwide? Not viral, because viral moments explode once and disappear just as fast. Worldwide is different. It doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with repetition. The same name appearing again and again, across unrelated spaces, spoken by people who didn't plan to find it. Fame is when many people look at you once. Recognition is when people begin to remember you. And in 2026, something shifted. SB19 was no longer being discovered through heavy fan promotion. They were being encountered. Listeners stumbled onto performances. Viewers watched clips without context. Reactions came not from obligation, but surprise. What made this moment unusual was its silence. There was no single viral video defining the year. No one performance dominating timelines. Instead, SB19 kept reappearing. In different countries, different platforms, different conversations. That's when the tone changed. Because when people stop asking, "Who are they?" and start asking, "Why are they everywhere?" That's not hype building. That's presence forming. And presence is where global journeys truly begin. Before 2026, SB19 were already powerful, but their power had a clear center of gravity. Southeast Asia knew them well. The Philippines claimed them proudly. Their fan base was loyal, organized, and emotionally invested at a level few groups ever achieve. But global reach doesn't begin with passion alone. Outside their core regions, SB19 were respected more than they were recognized. Other artists acknowledged their talent. Industry observers noticed their discipline. Yet institutions, global playlists, media pipelines, and international music systems move slowly. They don't react to talent. They respond to consistency. That's why international expansion rarely happens in moments. It happens in preparation. In 2025, the groundwork quietly started forming. Fan translations increased, allowing global listeners to understand lyrics and interviews without barriers. International reaction channels began returning. Not for curiosity, but because the performances held replay value. Their music started appearing in broader playlists, no longer limited to regional categories. These weren't breakthroughs, they were signals. Nothing exploded in 2025, but something stabilized. SB19's name stopped being temporary, it began staying. And that distinction matters. Because when 2026 arrived, it didn't create a new version of SB19. It simply exposed what had already been building underneath, an artist identity strong enough to travel without being pushed. 2026 didn't start the fire. It revealed what had already been burning, slowly, patiently, and with purpose. By the time 2026 arrived, SB19 didn't suddenly become different. They became ready. What many people mistake as overnight growth was, in reality, the result of careful discipline throughout 2025, a year defined not by noise, but by refinement. Instead of chasing global attention, the group focused on becoming clearer in how they presented themselves to the world. Their branding grew sharper. Visual identity became consistent, intentional, and readable even to first-time viewers. Their communication improved, not just in language, but in confidence. English interviews felt less rehearsed, more natural, allowing international audiences to connect without distance. Storytelling also evolved. Music videos stopped functioning as simple visuals and began operating as narratives, structured, emotional, and memorable. Each release felt designed not just to impress fans, but to communicate meaning across cultures. Most importantly, their performance level aligned with global expectations. Live vocals, precision, stamina, nothing depended on editing or spectacle. What viewers saw was repeatable excellence, and with that came the quiet shift. SB19 gradually moved away from being perceived as idols chasing moments and toward artists building longevity. The focus turned from trends to craft. That's why 2026 worked, because you don't go global by chasing the world. You go global by becoming undeniable, until the world eventually has no choice but to notice. When 2026 began, something subtle happened. The way people were discovering SB19 started to change. Before, visibility depended heavily on fandom activity, shares, campaigns, organized pushes. But in 2026, discovery began happening without permission, without announcements, without explanation. Algorithms started doing the work. Clips surfaced naturally on timelines. Performances appeared beside unrelated artists. Viewers encountered SB19 not because someone told them to watch, but because the system decided they were worth showing. That distinction is critical. New international audiences didn't arrive with expectations. They clicked out of curiosity. Their reactions were unfiltered, neutral, sometimes even skeptical. And yet, many stayed. Not because they were persuaded, but because something held their attention. Engagement slowly expanded beyond familiar regions. More non-Filipino listeners commented. More first-time viewers returned for second videos. Not out of loyalty, but interest. SB19 weren't dominating trends. They weren't flooding timelines. They were circulating. Their content kept resurfacing in different spaces, to different people, in different countries, quietly building recognition through repetition. And that's when growth becomes real. Because when strangers start finding you without asking, that's not promotion anymore. That's global movement. As 2026 progressed, something noticeable began appearing beneath SB19's content. Not louder praise, but different questions. At first, many international viewers typed the same thing. Who are they? But slowly, that question evolved. It became, why didn't I know them earlier? That shift matters, because curiosity asks for information. Regret signals connection. Listeners who didn't understand the language still understood the emotion. The tension in a chorus, the restraint before a vocal rise, the weight carried in their performances. Meaning traveled even when words did not. Reaction channels reflected this change clearly. Many creators who initially approached SB19 with casual interest returned, not because of requests, but because the performances lingered. Videos turned into series. One reaction became multiple. Surprise turned into respect. And respect turned into admiration. What stood out was the honesty of these responses. They weren't guided by fandom. They weren't coached by context. Viewers reacted in real time, pausing, rewinding, sitting silently through key moments. Music began doing what it does at its highest level. It communicated without explanation. SB19 didn't need listeners to understand Filipino. They needed them to feel sincerity. And once that feeling landed, borders stopped mattering. Because the world didn't fall in love with SB19's language. It connected with their emotion, and emotion travels farther than translation ever could. What ultimately allowed SB19 to cross borders wasn't exposure alone. It was performance. Across cultures, genres, and audiences, one truth remains constant. Great performance is recognizable instantly. It doesn't require explanation. It doesn't depend on context. You either believe what you're watching, or you don't. SB19's performances worked globally because they were built on discipline. Live vocals delivered under pressure, controlled breathing, clean transitions. intensity sustained from opening note to final beat. Nothing felt accidental. There was no reliance on heavy effects to create emotion, no masking through editing, no moments carried by spectacle alone. What audiences saw was execution, repeatable, consistent, and grounded in training. That clarity made their stages easy to read, even for first-time viewers. The message of the performance came through without confusion. Viewers understood when a moment was meant to hit, when silence mattered, when restraint was intentional. And that's rare. Many acts entertain, few convince. Entertainment makes you smile. Conviction makes you stop scrolling. SB19 didn't perform to impress. They performed to communicate. And when performance becomes communication, it stops being regional, because great performance doesn't need translation. It speaks directly to instinct. One of the most powerful aspects of SB19's global movement in 2026 was how naturally their identity traveled with them. They didn't explain where they came from. They didn't pause performances to educate audiences. They didn't package culture as a product. They simply lived it. Their Filipino identity existed in posture, emotion, rhythm, and perspective, present but never overstated. It wasn't introduced with disclaimers or framed as something needing approval. It stood confidently, without apology, and that confidence mattered. International audiences didn't feel instructed on how to interpret them. Instead, they observed authenticity in motion. Viewers sensed that this wasn't performance built for export. It was expression built from experience. That subtlety created respect. Rather than feeling marketed toward, global listeners felt invited. They didn't consume culture as content. They encountered it as reality. And reality resonates far deeper than presentation. In 2026, many international fans began expressing admiration, not just for the music, but for the integrity behind it. The roots were visible, not as branding, but as foundation. SB19 didn't attempt to represent an entire nation. They represented themselves honestly. And in doing so, they allowed others to connect without pressure or symbolism being forced upon them. They didn't export culture. They lived it, and the world noticed. Global recognition rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive through trending banners or dramatic headlines. More often, it appears quietly, through shifts in conversation, tone, and attention among those who shape the industry. In 2026, subtle signs began surfacing around SB19. Their name appeared more frequently in global discussions centered on performance quality and artistry, not curiosity. Mentions felt observational rather than surprised. The framing changed from "who are they?" to "they're interesting." International creatives began acknowledging their work in passing comments, interviews, and professional spaces. Not endorsements, not campaigns. Simply recognition, the kind that carries weight because it isn't loud. There was also growing curiosity from global producers and media observers. Questions began forming behind the scenes. Not about trends or novelty, but about potential, about sound, about direction. Most importantly, the language around SB19 matured. They were no longer being discussed as a regional phenomenon. They were being evaluated as artists, their choices, consistency, and identity becoming the focus rather than their origin. That distinction matters, because legitimacy isn't granted when people watch you. It's granted when people begin considering you. Global recognition doesn't arrive with headlines. It arrives with doors opening quietly, often before the public even realizes they're unlocked. By the close of 2026, a question lingered in the minds of casual viewers and international observers alike. Had SB19 truly become worldwide? The answer isn't simple. Worldwide does not mean mainstream everywhere. It doesn't mean topping every chart or filling every arena. It isn't instant. Instead, worldwide means being recognized beyond borders, noticed in unexpected spaces, acknowledged by strangers, and understood by audiences who weren't actively seeking you. By that measure, SB19 had reached a pivotal moment. They weren't just known by loyal fans, they were known of. Their performances, their music, and their story began circulating in ways that suggested permanence rather than novelty. 2026 became the year of transition. It didn't mark the peak of their influence. It marked the shift from regional prominence to cross-border awareness.